Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing this evening? Okay. Glad to see all the excitement in the voices. All right. Today's date is Tuesday, August 20th. The time is now 7 p.m. And the City of Williston City Council meeting has come to order. Ms. Wright, Ms. Stacy, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Goodman, absent. Council President Michael Cox.
Here.
Vice President Dr. Hines.
Here.
Councilmember Meredith Martin.
Here.
Councilmember Alexa Riccio. Here. Councilmember Deborah Jones.
Here.
And all other staff.
Present.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Open in prayer and pledge of allegiance to the flag by Fire Chief Lamar Stiegel. Everybody stand.
Let us pray. Lord, I thank you for allowing us to gather here tonight. Please watch over us as we go about the city's business tonight. Lord, make us good stewards of your word through our words and actions. Lord, we thank you for living in a country where we're free to get up and vote and express our opinions. We thank you for the many blessings you've bestowed upon us. I ask everything in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Item 1, additions, deletion, changes, and approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the addition, deletion, changes of the agenda?
A second.
Got a motion, got a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Item 2, public participation. This is your first of 2 opportunities to address the council. At this time, is there anybody in the audience can come to the podium and speak for 5 minutes on any topic other than what's on the agenda? Okay. Here. All right, item 3, consent agenda. These are for the minutes from July 16th of 2024.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
A second. All right, you got a first, got a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Welcome, sir. Glad you could join us. All right, item 4, updates. City Manager Terry.
I have been, unless y'all have questions of me. I'll be more than happy to answer.
Thank you, sir. Staff. Mr. Fire Chief Stiegel.
Yes, sir. Over the weekend, I just wanted to announce that the city of Williston received a assistance to firefighter grant from the federal government to the tune of $260,000. The matching funds is $12,380, which we had budgeted for. So it's
Great news.
it's really good news. But just wanted to let y'all know about that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And how much was that again?
$260,000 total.
Fantastic. Police Chief Rolls.
So last night, while you were all sleeping comfortable in your homes, there was a homicide in the county right on the edge of the city last night, and the suspect decided he was going to come to the city of Williston. So me and the team gathered up along with the Levy County Sheriff Office, and I'm glad to report that we took that subject into custody last night without any harm, without any fouls, anybody besides the one victim that he took his actions out on. But I'm glad to report to you all that our little city is safe.
Thank
For
you,
now.
sir.
For now.
Ms. Willis, anything HR? All right. Council?
I have a question. Actually, it's more of a request, and it's Ms. Jones. I would like just a single-page layout of the site plan for the Wawa because people are asking me questions,
Sure.
and I haven't laid eyes on it.
Do you want it electronically or do you want it?
Any way that you would like to give it.
Okay.
would
I'll
be
send
fine.
you it electronically and then we have the big plans in my office.
Okay.
I've had a few people come in and ask and I've shown them the big plans and then sent them home with a smaller one.
Yes, that would be great.
Okay.
Other people may want it too, but I would like to have it.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor? Nothing? Yes, sir.
So far as the weekly pothole report, but don't have much to report this week because we've been busy on other projects. But starting in Monday, we'll be back on doing potholes full time again.
All right, very good. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Just to report that I know there's been questions about John Henry. We were planning on opening that the Friday before Labor Day weekend, so I did want to mention that. We will have more park closed signs up because we've had an issue with that. So we're putting more signs up, but all the painting and all the updating, everything should be completed by Friday of next week.
Very good. Okay. Anybody else? Item 5, new business. A, discussion with possible action, presentation on natural gas hedging, Public Works Director, Supervisor Donald Barber, and Katie Hall, President of FGU.
All right, good evening, Council. We're privileged to have the President of FGU here, Ms. Katie Hall here. She'll be doing a presentation in just a moment. What this is the staff is looking for direction from the Council on whether or not you guys have a desire to look into possibilities of diversifying the city's natural gas portfolio. And after the presentation, if you have any interest in moving in that direction. And far be it for me to present, so Ms. Hall.
Stacy, her slides start on page 9. Page 9, going the wrong way. Uh-huh. Just need to find it myself. So.
Are you doing it or you want me to? Whichever one. You can handle it. You want it?
Thank you. Again, my name is Katie Hall. I'm the General Manager and CEO of Florida Gas Utility. I also have Steve Prado here with me. He's our middle office analyst who works in our accounting department. So he's here with me as well. Many of you, I think, have seen me present here before. As I go through this, feel free to stop me at any point with any questions, or we can answer questions again at the end. Whichever you prefer. So as Donald said, we're going to talk about natural gas financial hedging. I think we've presented this to you in the past. This is a little bit different take on it, but fundamentally it's going to be very similar. So what is hedging? Hedging is a type of financial or investment that tries to reduce volatility in a product, right, in pricing. So any commodity can be hedged. Corn, natural gas, apples, anything commodity-wise you can hedge. There's several financial products that you can use, but we're going to try to keep it pretty simple, and we're going to just focus on 2 of them today, which are futures contracts and call options. So why do we hedge? Hedging, this is probably the most important slide we have on this presentation. Hedging is not an attempt to beat the market. I'm going to repeat that because it's important. It's not an attempt to beat the market. We are not trying to get the lowest cost gas possible. What we're trying to do is meet your budget and your rate stability needs. That's what we're trying to achieve with this. So hedging helps reduce that volatility, and anything as we go on here, as we set it to whatever your budget goals are, this is a way to help achieve that. So view it more as an insurance policy. When we talk about you have home insurance, Are you upset that you paid for home insurance and then your house didn't burn down? Right? No. So the point of this is to have that protection from the risk in the market, but don't be upset if it doesn't lead you to the lowest price. That's what we want to focus on today. So we don't want to look back and talk about winning or losing or beating the market. We want to say that we helped achieve the goals that we set out. So the next slide is, when do we hedge? A good hedging program is ongoing. And unfortunately, what we see is we saw this in 2022 when the market, we called it the basis blowout, and gas prices started going high very rapidly. And that got everybody's attention, and everybody said, we've got to stop the bleeding, and they wanted to lock in hedging at that point. That's actually probably the worst time to hedge because you're just trying to stop the bleeding at that point. Right now is exactly when you should be hedging, but this is usually when cities become complacent because they realize prices are down, they're stable, we don't have to worry about that. You have 25 other things that are fires right now that you're working on. This is no longer at the top of your list. But this is exactly when it should be, because we can lock in prices that help minimize any of that volatility going forward. So what we're going to talk about today that's slightly different is this is an ongoing program we're proposing, rather than in the past we said, let's lock it in from this point to this point. It was a very set parameter. This is something that's going to be setting parameters for an ongoing program. So current forecast. Right now, like I said, prices are relatively low. These numbers are slightly outdated where we have this $2 gas. We deal in decatherms. That's just the unit that we use. You probably bill in therms. So a decatherm is 10 therms. So we have it on here that it's roughly $2 a decatherm or 20 cents a therm. Prices have gone up a little bit since we put this together. It's driven right now because the heat, they use gas to generate electricity. When it's hot, a lot of gas is making a lot of electricity for AC load. So prices have gone up a little bit. But what we're seeing is even though prices are still relatively low, we see a couple things that might cause it to increase in the near future. So the three things that we've identified here is we have more LNG coming online. LNG is liquefied natural gas. You probably have heard about this. They can liquefy it, and that way they can export it. So what's going to happen is they're building all these facilities on the ports right now in Florida where they're going to be exporting this gas. It still has to run through the same pipelines that is coming to serve the city of Williston and all of the cities in Florida. But let me just talk about the scale of this, the magnitude. One of those LNG facilities can use as much as half of the entire state in one day. So when you're building multiple LNG facilities, that is potentially doubling or tripling the demand in the state of Florida. So huge demand increase. Also, producer contracts are set to expire. They're very often linked with presidential election terms for obvious reasons. When you get somebody in that's either pro-gas or anti-gas, they want to make sure they align with their contracts. So just because the term is, or we have an election cycle coming up, a lot of those contracts will be expiring. They may or may not renew them based on the outcome of the election. And then also, we've had traditionally some mild weather the last year or so, which help reduce costs. But like I just said, when we have hot summers where they're generating a lot of electricity, but then really it's more so in the winter when we get a real winter. And when I say a real winter, I don't mean just for Florida. I mean nationwide, because then the gas will be funneled to where they really need the coal. So it was relatively mild all last winter across the country. If anybody's listened to the Farmer's Almanac, they're preparing for a pretty cold winter. And what that does is then they take it all where it's considered essential for heating up there, and they'll divert it. The pipelines will literally reverse course and take it away from the heat, the warmer part of the country. So we see that now there's going to be this increased demand, potentially reduced supply. All of it is basic economics that's going to be straining prices and making them go up. So the next slide, this just shows we have a 1-year curve and a 3-year curve. So this is looking out. This is the futures market right now. All I want to show here is that on the 1-year curve, we always see that little bump over the winter. That's very normal. On the right, though, what I want to show is you see that little bump over the winter, but then it comes back down. But overall, even though it's still gradually increasing, it's still relatively stable. So we're saying right now is that great price or great time to lock it in because you can get a pretty safe, nice budgeted item there without, if any volatility comes in the market, it's not looking at that right now. So that's all we're trying to point out here is that it's a gradual increase, but not major. So that's why it's a good time to start looking at some products. The next slide on here shows the left-hand side of the curve or of this graph. Yeah, we'll go down to the next one. So So the left-hand side there, I guess it came up sideways, but I guess the top of what you're looking at there, that shows actual prices. So you can kind of see, even though it's got little spikes, it gradually came back down. That's where it hit that between $1.50 and $2 mark. The three lines, that green, blue, and orange, all that's showing is that's your futures contract prices. The blue one was from May a year ago. The green one was from December, and then the orange one is from May this year. So all we're trying to show is that the immediate prices, there's a little bit more of a spread, but if you look out over that timeline, they're still all very aligned. So even a year later, they're still showing this nice consistent curve, is all we're trying to point out with that slide. So the next slide is products. So I said there's multiple financial products out there, but we want to stick with two that are pretty simple. They're very risk averse, all things considered, and they're a futures contract, which is basically setting a price, which is what you've done in the past. You set the price, that's the price you pay. The other option we're bringing as something for you to consider is a call option, which is basically setting a ceiling price. So you'll never pay more than that. So if the gas prices go below that ceiling price, you actually get the benefit of that lower price. Now, there is a premium attached to that, so it's not free to have that luxury. But if that's something you're concerned with, then that gives you a little bit more flexibility than just locking in a price. And what we're proposing when we talk about this is actually approving both of those, because as we would look at the market, there's sometimes it makes more sense to lock in a futures price, and then there's other times it would make more sense to lock in a call option. So what we're saying is have both of these as options, and we would talk with staff because these things move pretty quick. So we would say, hey, we're going to set some parameters, and then we would talk with them to make sure we achieve the goals that you guys set for us if we approve this. So the next slide on here just shows you what that looks like. So the left-hand side, this is a futures contract. So the blue line there is following the market. That yellow line, that would be if you set a futures contract at, it's roughly 320. So that's the price you're going to pay regardless of what the market does. On the right-hand side, this is a call option. So again, the same blue line as the market. That yellow line, though, would be your call option. So you can see here that when prices go above the yellow line, that's your ceiling. You never pay above that. But when the prices come below that, you get the benefit of that lower price. So all we're trying to do is just show you what those both look like on a chart. So to put this is the basis blowout that I referred to in 2022. You can see the market was super volatile. It jumped all over the place. In that, a lot of our members locked in a futures price. So on the left-hand side, let's just say they locked in 750. More or less, it kind of all evened out when it was all said and done. But what you can see on the far right side of that curve, or of that graph, is now people were locking in at 750, and then the price went down to $5 or below, so they felt like they were way overpaying. And people have short memories, right? They think about what's going on right now. They forget that they benefited when prices were way high, and now they're just saying, oh, the market's low and we're overpaying. So on the right-hand side, what that's showing is if you would have done a call option instead, you can see that you protected yourself from those big spikes, but then you also enjoyed when the prices came back down. So that's why we say have both options. When there's volatility, a call option makes a lot of sense. When there's not as much volatility, that futures price is a nice, easy curve. So we just want to kind of show you what the market might be doing of why you would use each product. So naturally, you're going to ask me, what's that premium look like? There is a premium to a call option to have that luxury of the lower prices. So this is just an example. These are not set. This was just, we wanted to reach out and see what something like that would look like. So your call option is always going to be tied to the futures contract. So in this example, when we pulled this, which was roughly a month ago, a futures contract strip for 1 year was going at $3.39 a decatherm. So if you wanted to lock in that futures at set price, you could lock it in at $3.39 for the next year. Really good price. If you said, though, I want to do a call option instead so that if the price goes down, here's what it would look like. All we're trying to show here is that strike price, the closer you get to that futures contract, the higher your premium is going to be. So the more wiggle room you give yourself on that ceiling, the lower your premium gets. So as you're closer to the futures contract, you're at about 12% premium. But if you give yourself almost $1 buffer, you're down to about less than 5%, which is 2 cents a therm. That's very, very minimal to pass on to your customers to protect them from gas prices going up to $6, $7, $8 like we saw in 2022. That's how we see it, is it's a very small price to pay to eliminate that risk. So just wanted to give you an example. Those premiums though change all the time when there's again more volatility in the market. Those premiums are going to go up. So on the next slide, we want to talk about the quantity. So what we're proposing, again, this is rolling. It's a rolling program. So at any given time, we're saying up to 12 months out that we would lock in up to 75% of your average daily use in a hedging program. 2 years out, we would go up to 50%. And 3 years out, we could go up to 25%. So then as we get to those thresholds, you would then build on top of them. So once you're a year out, that now 50%, you're going to add a 25% on top of it to get you to the 75%. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, we say up to, because sometimes the market's not conducive. We're not going to lock in just because we said we were going to lock in. We're going to wait till we think it meets the goals you're trying to achieve. So this just gives us that flexibility to go up to these amounts, but doesn't require us to do so. And again, all this is doing is helping stabilize your rate. That's all this is attempting to do. So the next slide just shows this. So the yellow line that jumps all over, that's your average daily use for those months. We just took it over a 3-year. It's the same 1 year usage. We just projected it out for 3 years. And then you can see the 75% is that blue color shaded, the 50% is the orange, and then the 25% is the green. So you still have a little wiggle room in there to play the market, but that's how much of your average daily usage would be kind of stabilized, if you will, in this proposal. So the strike price is basically, that's whatever price we're going to lock in. Like I said, either the ceiling or that set price is your strike price. We would base that on whatever number is put in the city's budget. So you guys usually have a price per therm that you project to pass on to your customers. We see it as if we can achieve that goal, that budget number or anything below that, we should lock it in. That's how we view it, because you're helping meet that goal that you pass on to your customers. If the numbers are above that, we would say it's not the right time and wait till the numbers are conducive. There's some other things that don't want to get into the weeds. If you want me to, I can, but there's other, we have like transportation and basis differential. These are just kind of some of the things that happen in the market. We would subtract that out. So for instance, I'm making these numbers up. If you say we have 50 cents a therm is your goal, and we know transportation and basis is about 10 cents, then we would say we have to get to 40 cents. So these are just things that we would work on our side. And the strike price will account for any of those additional costs in there. So a couple other things just to mention is these parameters that you set for us. Like I said, it doesn't mean if you approve this today, it doesn't mean we go out tomorrow necessarily and lock this in. But what we found is the market moves every minute, right? So to get on an agenda, to get it approved to you, by the time we see something that's conducive to meeting your needs, that opportunity might be gone by the time we set up a meeting. So what we're saying is if you set the parameters, for instance, we had the LNG I mentioned earlier. So when prices were high, about a year and a half ago, one of the LNG facilities that was in Louisiana actually had an explosion. And as horrible as it was great for the industry because it helped bring prices down, because they used roughly half of what the state of Florida used in a day. So when they said, we had this explosion, we're shut down, now all of a sudden we have all the supply we didn't think we had. So prices dropped immediately the next day. But then the LNG facility came out and said, well, the damage wasn't that bad. We're going to be back up by the end of the month. And prices immediately rebounded. So we had about a 12-hour window where prices dropped about half. And so if we had these parameters in place, for instance, we could have called the city and said, hey, prices just dropped in half. We can lock in your futures for $3 where everybody else was locking in at $6. So if we have that and we have those opportunities, we can jump on them. So that's what we're looking for. We just want to have that flexibility in the market. Additionally, I know we're asking for an ongoing program, but at any time, if you want to terminate it, we can stop the program going forward. So this is something that is easy to get in and easy to get out. So just wanted to clarify that for you. So the last slide is basically what our recommendation is. So we're recommending approving this rolling hedging plan. The 3 parts of this directive would say the product, which again would be those futures contracts or that call option. The quantity would be up to 75% per year out, up to 50% 2 years out, and up to 25% 3 years out. And then that strike price, which is tied to your budgeted price per therm in the city's budget. And again, all of this would be discussed with staff before we pull the trigger on anything. We just want to have approval from you to be able to work with them to implement it. I know that this is kind of a complicated topic, so trying to not get too much in the weeds. But any questions?
So you can't use both the futures and the cap at the same time. It's an either or decision that we would be making. Is that my understanding?
At any one time, but you can layer them. So you could, for instance, say we want 25% locked into a call option and 50% into a futures, but you can't layer them onto the same gas.
Yeah. And then my second question is with the premiums, who establishes the premiums, and you said they can change. So what level of volatility would we be looking at with those premiums?
So the company that we would lock in any of these hedges with would be a clearinghouse, and they're the ones that set that. So we would just reach out to them and give them a for instance. So we'd say we're looking for a call option, in my example, say around $4 for this quantity of gas, and they would give us some pricing, and then we could make a decision from there.
And how long would those premiums hold? Is that renewed annually, or?
Well, once you lock in a premium, it's set. So if we called and told the city it's a 2-cent premium for the next year to lock this in, that's all you pay. But as far as when they give an offer and for us to approve it, it's usually within a 24-hour window.
And so if we decide to do this every year, it would roll over and we'd be looking at new numbers, or?
And again, we don't have to do all 75%, for instance, at one time. So we could say, let's break that into multiple deals. And so maybe we only lock in 25%, and then in a month or two, we wait and see what the market's doing, and then we might lock in another 25%. You know, it doesn't have to be all or nothing all at one time. So we can kind of have that flexibility to make sure you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right? You want to have that diversity.
And then you would just contact staff.
Yes, sir.
And say, hey, this is what's going on.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we would wait till we see something that is conducive. So we would have your parameters, and when we see something that fits within that, we would then call and say, hey, this checks every box. We think this is a good time to lock it in, and they would say, yes, do it. And then we would lock that in for you, and then it's set. And then we can always bring you periodic reports to just kind of show you. We just caution, don't look at it as winning or losing. But as long as we're saying, hey, these are how many deals we entered into, and here were the parameters that were set that we met, we would give you more of that kind of a report.
So, but when you say staff, you're talking about the city.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Mr. Barb.
Yeah, this is part of the greater conversation we've had, both electric and gas. And this is also, of course, we have the purchasing element of this, which is primarily what we're talking about. If Stephen were on the line, I don't think he is, but this is the conversations we have. What do we put in a budget for how much the city for the next fiscal year is planning on spending for our side, the wholesale, in purchasing the gas or purchasing the electricity? What this does is it helps us define that budget more carefully with some of those savings. And as Katie said, sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, right? Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low. But it's the cost average. What your goal for your customer is to stabilize what their monthly overhead would be, so that their bill doesn't go from $30 on average to 1 month all of a sudden it can go to $70 1 month. And that's also how we would accomplish this, again, as Terry just alluded to. It would be, obviously his direction, getting the data recommended from FGU, and we would change the ordinance is basically what we would do. We would write this into ordinance. You guys would give us parameters, and then operating within those parameters, Terry would make those calls, or whoever had the position would make those calls in reference to what they thought was the best thing to do. So that's kind of what we're looking for. That was the direction and the reason for the presentation, is to see if that's something you guys would like to see drafted up as part of our ordinance, changed, and to work toward this. Or, is this something that you guys think that we should just continue in the path that we're currently on?
What is the path we're currently
on? We are at the, shall we say, the mercy of the market.
Right.
Now, we do have some of our, what we call our prepay, and Katie can talk about those for a moment. That's when she's come before to y'all and talked about there's certain things, and I think there's 4 of them that we can have. I think we currently have 3, if I'm not mistaken.
So how much of that prepaid we have currently locked?
We have that you can go up to 80%. I don't believe you're at your full 80% yet. So we would be looking, but you're probably at 60 to 70% right now. But this can be layered on top of it. This is a financial product on top of that prepay.
So do we have, let me just ask another question. Do we have any idea right now, today, right now today, we're paying for Dexter?
You're probably, so on the raw commodity or what you're actually passing through to your customers?
Both.
So the raw commodity is probably around $3.50-ish.
Right.
But then there's transportation costs and cost to get it to your city, which maybe adds another $1 on there, roughly $1 to $1.50. So again, that's in decatherms. So that puts you at, what is that, roughly 50 cents a therm?
Just kind of rough math. So if we were to lock in 50% at the current, you're talking about the $3 rate. What is the current lock-in rate?
Yeah, so we're talking about just the raw gas. So right now, that's what I'm saying. We're at somewhere about $3.50, and the futures contract, when we pulled it, it's been a couple weeks, but it was at $3.39. Mm-hmm. But again, you're locking that in for a full year. So kind of to Donald's point, or that one graph that shows how it spikes in the winter, this would lock that. It takes into account the highs and the lows and gives you one price through the year.
Yeah.
So when the prices go up in the winter, say they jump to $5, you're still going to enjoy that $3.39. So it might not look like huge savings over the summer, but then you'll we like it. What we heard from customers during the basis blowout was not necessarily that prices were too high. It was that it was too volatile. It was things like, and it wasn't necessarily the residential, it was the commercial saying, I can't price my telephone poles because my inputs keep changing month to month. How can I bid projects? So they were just wanting that stability and to have a budgeted number. So that's what this helps achieve, is that you're not saying, to Donald's point, it's my gas bill's $50 one month and then it's $80 the next month. This kind of helps smooth that. So it might go from like 50 to 52, but it just kind of helps keep those big fluctuations. Because again, in the winter, you're going to then have more gas usage in general. So the bill is going to go up because your usage is higher. But this just helps keep that price per unit stable so that people aren't shocked with their bill.
So let me ask you this. So we're talking about locking in up to 75% for how long? 1 year?
Mm-hmm.
And then we would move 50%?
We would do this at the same time. So what we would do is they would stack on top of each other. So say we do 25% for 3 years out. And then we would do 50% 2 years out. We lock that in right now. Because what we saw is that nobody projected that basis blowout in 2022. So we had some cities like Tallahassee and Clearwater have a rolling program. They were paying $2.20 when everybody else was paying, because they just kept it right. They just have this kind of rolling along all the time. So that's what we're saying. It's not we wait for 75% and then do 50. These will all be locked in at the time, and they just kind of stack on top of them as we go. That's kind of the rolling part of it. That's the intent of that.
So let me ask you a question, because you're saying they had the call-out prices. What's helped them? Even though, like something like Tallahassee or Clearwater, they had the call-out price plus the locked-in for the future. Mm-hmm. So they were able to utilize the call-in price to do what?
So they had, I don't know exactly the percentage, but say they had 50% tied up in the hedging that they were only paying $2 for, $2.50 or something like that. And then when the prices went up to $6, $7, that averaged out. So then their average price to their customers was like $3.50 a decatherm or 35 cents a therm when everybody else was pushing $1. Right. So they used it just to help it. You've heard of like rate stabilization funds.
Yes.
It's the same concept. We're just doing it at the market level rather than once it gets into your actual billing.
It's the difference between prepay rate stabilization, like we're doing with the electric, where the fund is just sitting there to be utilized for reimbursement. And as she said, just going ahead of taking care of it on the front end to average out that price cost.
So I think the one big question we have to know, and I apologize for not knowing this question, and Stephen's not on the line, is how much money have we committed to next year's budget, so we have an idea of what we can hedge. Right?
Yeah. Well, yes and no.
She'll use that price though.
Yep.
We don't really need to have to go it. She'll know. She will find out.
Yeah, and so it's not a total dollar amount; it's the price per unit. So I think you participate with FMPA, right?
Mhm. Yes.
It's exactly what they did. They backed into the gas price there from the per kilowatt price, kilowatt per megawatt, kilowatt.
Kilowatt.
So they backed in. They said to achieve this price per kilowatt, we know that the gas has to be at this price, and that's how they hit their threshold for what they lock in. We're just going right to the gas part and saying whatever your goal is and what you're going to pass on to your customers, we're going to meet that or below it. So it's a very similar concept. We're trying to make those as similar as possible since you're familiar with that.
And it not only helps our budget, but it helps our residents' budget.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost a no-brainer because they do all the work.
We try.
Yeah.
We try.
You just have to figure out the percentage that we want to do.
Yeah, and all of this is what we proposed was just we're actually proposing this within our own staff as well to all of our members. We call it our system supply. So on that one chart where I showed your 75%, 50%, and 25%, and there was that little bit in difference between what was shaded and what your actual usage, you buy that daily from it, or we buy that on your behalf daily. What we're saying is that's part of our system supply. We're proposing exactly the parameters I set for that system supply, and you would also get the benefit of that. So that we were just trying to keep it consistent. But if you say those percentages are a little too aggressive right now, let's start smaller. Absolutely, these are all negotiable, all flexible.
Do I remember that you store it on our behalf until we need it?
Yeah, and there's some of that prepay as well that we referenced. You get some of that from the system supply as well.
So I think my question would be is, I don't foresee the market. I mean, it could go down, I guess it could, but, we do know some people that locked in when the prices got bad, and now they're paying more, and we're not even near to that price range. If we were looking at locking in what we're currently paying, would kind of make sense. I mean, because we really don't, there's no projection that's going to go down. And as everything does, it goes up. So at least over a 3-year period, right? 3 years?
Yes.
How long?
Yes, 3 years.
That, we can manage what we're paying for natural gas.
And to solidify your point, one of the biggest things that FGU has talked to members about is what's going on in the European market.
Yep.
I mean, that's why these facilities are being built. With most of that gas supply coming from Russia, and right now that being disrupted, they can make a lot more money liquefying that and sending it overseas, and that's really one of the biggest problems with the supply and demand over here in the States. And that right now doesn't have any hope of ending. So, this is definitely something that's going to be ongoing for a period of time.
So one more question. So when you said that place caught on fire, right, and the prices dropped, that's the part I don't understand. I would think prices would go up because everybody's anticipating demand is going to be down.
Because they couldn't send it out of country. Because it was.
That's what it was.
All the gas that would have been going to that facility was now having to go into the market area. So it just flooded the supply for that. And so everybody thought, oh, we have all this extra supply that now all these people have contracts, they're going to be giving it away.
Yep.
And so then everybody, got excited, and then all of a sudden the facility said, just kidding, we'll be taking it again. And then it was panic.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. But you're absolutely right with the prices. Like, we see it. We did have prices down about $2. We even got below that. The market cannot sustain that. These companies can't afford to operate at a loss. So you might see these little dips like that, but it's not sustainable. Those are much, prices are, like you said, they're much likely to go up, more likely to go up than they are to go back down to $2.
And this is just our natural gas. So just be mindful. This is not going to do anything for our electrical bill.
Correct. This is not tied to your electric bill.
Right. Okay.
It doesn't affect the people that are making our electric.
Right.
That is correct.
They're hedging that.
They are, and they actually are doing it through us. So you are actually getting the benefit, but that's not what you're talking about right now. But yes.
Mr. Bishop.
So Katie just hit on something I wanted to bring up. So we were both down in West Palm for the conference, and FMPA has a new plant just came online, propane plant, and they're doing exactly what Katie's talking about to us. They're already doing it for themselves, which are the people we buy our electrics through. So just something to think about.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So I believe you said that this would happen in a 24-hour period, possibly. Is that
Possibly.
accurate?
Yes.
So what's going on in my mind is, if your company was just doing this, I would understand it. But how can you possibly get with staff get with the council, and then get back to you, and then authorize you to do it? I would understand it more if we were just authorizing you to do it.
We are.
Correct.
That's
yes.
what we would do.
Yes. So
But you said we would get with staff before we did anything.
yes. So we would call the city manager. So what we're asking today is for the council to approve the parameters. And then when we see that the market operates within those parameters, we would reach out to the city manager and say, we think that you should lock in this. And he would say yes or no. So that's how we
he
would move
be
quickly.
the one on the firing line.
Once we give him permission to be, yes.
Yes, once you
Yes.
give him
Yeah.
permission. Thank you.
Which
So-
he could then say we're on the firing line because we're going to recommend
well,
it. But
I
yes.
understand, but I just wanted to make sure that
Yes.
the mechanics of it
That's it.
were that we have a person that is in charge of it, because frankly, we as a council are slow as snails.
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
That's okay. I mean, we know it. We're government. We can't move fast. Okay, so this thing is designed that you will see a dip or a promise in the market. You will just talk to one person. You won't have to go through the council or the mayor or any of that. You talk to one person. They will agree with you or disagree with you, and that one person will make the change.
That is correct.
Thank you.
I have a question. So once you lock in at 25% first year, and the price drops, if you already locked in, how can you still go off?
So if you so you can lock in a call at 25%. You can do that from the start. You can use either product from the start. But once you've locked it in, you can't undo that. Or you can, it's very expensive. I wouldn't recommend doing it. So just because we have up to 25% doesn't necessarily mean we would lock all of that in at one time unless it was very favorable. So of the 25%, let's just say, I'm making these numbers up, we can say 10% into the first deal, and then maybe another 10% into a second deal, and then that 5%. Does that make sense? So we might not do it all at 25% unless, if you could lock it in like at 250, we would lock that in all day long at all of them out. So it kind of just depends what the market is, but that's when we would reach out to the city manager and kind of give, these are the options, here's what we would recommend, but get his feedback.
But you're looking at it over a 3-year period at 25%, or is year 3, first year is 25, second year is 50, third
Other way
year.
around. So 1 year, so from now, so basically your next fiscal year, at this point, let's just talk fiscal year. Your next fiscal year, we would lock in up to 75% of your average usage for that next year. But at the same time, we're going to lock in up to 50% 2 years out, and we're going to lock in 25% 3 years out. And the only reason for that is just to give you some kind of like a base load price so that it just helps if anything changes in the market, you have a little bit to help offset the volatility. Did I just confuse you even more?
Oh yeah. So my math is rather simple. I actually used to use the Slate Plaid.
Okay.
You just said 150%.
So 75% 1 year out, 50%
But
2
you've
years
already
out.
got 75.
They're layered on top. So the 20. So imagine 25% is
So it's
your
another
base.
50%.
Correct. And then you have 25% that only goes 2 years out, and then you have 25% that's just 1 year. So they're all stacked on top of each other.
To equal
In case it
75.
goes really
equals
crazy,
75%.
we're out
Gotcha.
3 years.
Gotcha.
Protected
Yes.
ourselves.
Yes. They layer.
That's why I say, you let them do it.
They layer.
That's what the good thing about it is.
And
They
this
do
is
it.
this is what a lot of councils do. You guys are not. This is very normal. I know it's overwhelming, and the reason we try to do this is we do think it's really in the best interest of your customers. Otherwise, we know that this is a lot to try to digest. So, but we do think it's worth it, and we do think it will pay off. And that's why I said we can bring some reports back and kind of show you, so that maybe when you see it, real examples, it starts to clear up a little bit.
And as I said, it protects not only the city and our budget, but it protects our residents.
But each year you have the potential of getting it locked in at a lower rate.
That's
Correct.
The real benefit for it is if it works out really well, the council could take credit, and if it fails, you could blame the city manager.
Yeah, that's why the city manager has one more question. So, and I understand all this. I asked the question for a reason, so maybe you shed some clarity on what we're trying to do here. My question is one that I don't know the answer to. Let's say we lock in at $3.50 and pay an extra $1.50 for a decatherm, and all of a sudden prices drop to $2, right? Where does that other $2.50 go to?
So in a call option or a future contract?
Either one. What I want to know, let's say that on a futures contract, if I'm locked in at 4.5 and it gets down as low as 2.5. So there's an extra $2 running around there. Who's getting that $2?
Okay, I'm going to give you the answer to this.
Okay.
And tell me, hopefully I don't lose you. So this is all financial, okay? So we're still going to go buy your gas at whatever the market rate is. You're still going to pay the market rate for that gas, regardless.
Right.
The financial side is it's done through margins. So whoever our clearinghouse is, if the market's at $4.50 and gas is only you've locked in at $4.50 and the market's only at $2, we have to pay that clearinghouse that $2.50 difference. We literally have a transaction with them every single day. So, but we do that on your behalf. So we don't have to reach out to the city. But so on the flip side, if you lock in $4.50 and gas prices go up to $6.50, they credit us back. So it's basically we're having an exchange of money every single day, regardless of what the market's doing. But then at the end of the month, when it's trued up, we put that onto your physical gas cost, so you only get one bill. And it trues up the physical cost of gas and then the financial side. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay.
So the clearinghouse did.
Or not.
So basically, whenever you lock in,
straight line.
yeah. So whenever you do a hedge, so whether it's a futures or a call, it's always somebody on the other taking the opposite end, right? That's what hedging is somebody agreeing to take the other position. So the easiest answer is that other side gets it. Right. So either they make the money or they're the one paying us for the difference. But you're always
they make
having
it 1 month, but the next month they lose.
Correct.
Correct. But all evens up. That's why it stays true.
Correct.
For that percentage. That is.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So do we need to bring this back for a resolution, or are we going to just make a motion now?
So we would actually like to work with Kirsten and FGU. We would like to actually modify the ordinance, and they would help us, and then Kirsten would review it. We would bring that ordinance back. Tonight we're looking for what you'd like to see in the parameters so that we can do the ordinance. And that way, once it's done in ordinance, it's just something that's part of our gas program.
So
At
we
the
would
same
amend
time,
an ordinance we already have, or make a new one?
no, we would completely just amend what's been
Amend
done.
what we already have.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
part of the whole initiative that we've tried each year to look at all of our ordinances and utilities and just make sure they're updated to the latest and greatest, basically.
And I think what got us here is the summer where, I guess it was summertime, where this place was packed. When we were charging $9 decatherm. With angry people. Yes, absolutely. Not with happy people. Yeah. So with and we have, I keep getting that fund. What's the fund she's mentioned?
Rate stabilization.
Yeah, we have one of those just to help also. And then locking this in will probably help that. I don't think we'll have herds of angry people in here. It goes up to $9.
And that's a great point. This is not to replace the rate stabilization fund. These are to go hand in hand. These are just more tools to help stabilize your rates, but they go hand in hand. Yes.
As a matter of fact, if it goes to $9 and everybody else is complaining, nobody's complaining.
Correct. You're
Right.
heroes.
Because they don't even know that it's called a $9 because they're still paying the normal rate, which is the good part. Correct. All right. So I think we need to do both of them.
Real quick. So how do we know what to change or what to look at in the ordinance if we don't know the ordinance?
They'll bring it to us.
Right, but we're voting on it now.
Well, no, we're voting to give it to them to write it and bring it back.
So just. But we have to give parameters, right?
You're giving us parameters. You're going to say, do you want to be aggressive with the proposal, I wouldn't even say theirs is actually kind of intermediate. Theirs is not really an aggressive proposal. Aggressive proposals say you do 100% first year out. So you can tell us, do you want, it's going to be aggressive, intermediate, which is what's being proposed, or very conservative. So that's kind of the parameters you all would give us. We would work with FGU to draft that language. Kirsten would review it, make sure that it met the legal standard, and then come before you guys. And it would have the 2 reads. I mean, you'd be able to, if you didn't like the first read and you guys discussed it, you didn't like what was there, we would go back for another first read. We keep doing that until you guys were happy with what those parameters were.
But if we don't even know what the ordinance says now, how
So
can we really give you parameters?
So essentially what you're doing right now is we also don't know exactly what the wording of the ordinance is going to be. So, but what we're saying is we're going to need a draft one. And there are going to be a couple of blanks that between FGU and the attorney, we can't fill in because it's really up to you guys. Do you want to be aggressive? Do you want to be conservative? Do you want to go somewhere intermediate? And so that's what you tell us, and then we fill in the blanks in this ordinance. Then we bring it back to you after you've given us this sense of what you want your parameters to be. Then we can fill it into the ordinance, put it in front of you. If we put in front of you an ordinance on first reading and you say, no, I don't really like those parameters anymore. I've changed my mind. I want to be more conservative. I want to be, more aggressive. Then you can change it at that time, just so that we don't bring you an ordinance with a bunch of blanks in it. Essentially, is what it would look like without you giving us a sense of sort of how you want to pursue this.
So are you going to give us the ordinance the way it's currently written, along with the changes that you're proposing to make?
So,
because I'm like,
always,
if I don't know what the ordinance looks like, then how am I gonna?
That's fair. So always how we have to do it, how we're required to do it, is your ordinances will have a strike-through version, which is basically a red line version. So anything that we take out of the ordinance will be stricken through, so you'll be able to see that. And then you'll also see underlined anything that we add to the ordinance.
On top of the business impact statement.
On top of the business impact statement.
How many of your customers did just went ahead and said 25, 50, 75?
3 so far. Nobody. Nobody said no. I have a couple more of these presentations to give, so I expect that number to go up. And like I said, some of our members actually have programs already in place, so they're set. So, but more and more of them are going in this direction.
So that's kind of in the median of the different levels where, like you said, we could be aggressive. Where would this one, like at 25, 50, 75, where would that fall?
We think it's the sweet spot. So it's not super aggressive, but it's enough to help reduce the volatility, right? It's kind of in the middle. It's probably a little bit more aggressive than conservative. This like up to 75%. But we matched FMPAs just because that's what everybody was comfortable with and had already received approval. So we were just trying to meet the same criteria for consistency.
And I will say we need to do it fairly quick while the price is down, because it will go up.
We do think it's going to go up for the winter. Yes.
Yeah. And if other certain things happen too, it could go up.
Am I correct? Quick for us to come up. It's an ordinance.
It couldn't be any more than that. Yeah, it couldn't be any sooner than that. And that's if we get it next meeting.
We will do our darndest.
Yeah, it will.
Kind of like the middle. I like that. 25, 50, 75.
Yeah, and the 75%, the reason we're comfortable going that high is because the market, we kind of know what that year out's going to look, right? The market doesn't usually get away from us that quickly. The 2 years out, 3 years out is the one that's not as known. So we're saying lock in enough to help kind of offset those big spikes, but it's not so much that if the market's conducive that you're too locked in. So that's why we're comfortable with it, because we can look at the next year out and the curves you saw, they're pretty consistent. They don't have a lot of volatility in the models.
So what would aggressive and what would conservative look like?
So real aggressive, as Donald said, would be like 100%, up to 100%, where you're basically trying to reduce all volatility. That's probably a little more aggressive than we would be comfortable with, just because you then have no flexibility. Conservative, I mean, even 25%, I would almost say that's too conservative, because that's not enough. Then you still have 75% at the mercy of the spot market. right? So that 50%, I think, is kind of that sweet spot for conservative because it's enough to make a difference, but it also still leaves you quite a bit to ride the market.
So I asked earlier about when this rolls over every year. So say a year from when we agree to do this, or a year from when you lock in these prices, what question is asked of the council at that point? Do we want to continue, or do we want to stay or change? That's the question every year?
That can be up to you. So how we're currently presenting it is we would not have to come back. This would be set, and we can just keep going in perpetuity. If you aren't comfortable with that, you certainly can put in check-in periods.
So
Right?
it's like an automatic renewal unless we decide we're not comfortable with how it's going. Incorrect.
So do we need to vote, or is it by consensus that you want direction?
Just give us a general consensus of the direction that you all are happy with, and we can move forward putting that ordinance together.
And you need to know whether we want futures
So if you can
and call
scroll up a
options.
little bit, I think the last slide on there had the parameters that we were recommending. 16. There you go. That's the recommendation. So there's the three things that we need some direction on. So the products, if those are futures and or call options, which, like I said, we recommend giving us flexibility to do either one. The quantity, that's what we just discussed, up to 75%, 50%, 25%, and then that strike price is tied to the budgeted price per therm in your city's budget.
And you would recommend the futures and the call options?
Correct.
That's what I heard you say.
I would approve.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
That's
Okay.
recommended.
Consensus? Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, council.
Yes, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, Section B, Resolution 2024-80, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Williston, Florida, approving extension to the interlocal agreement for the school crossing guards for the 2024-2025 school year and providing an effective date. City Manager Terry Bravado.
Thank you, Mr. President. So as you know, this is the crossing guard that's actually used to assist chief roles. It's been in place since 2006, I think, was the first year we did it. Over the years, we've negotiated it to where it's up to paying minimum wages, where it keeps pace with minimum wage as we go forward. So it's something that, absent this, I don't know how you would fill this. It would be almost impossible. But at least with this, this is what pays the rep to do his part. The only downside to this is that, if one day the rep's sick or something like that, unfortunately, chief's got to staff it. As we've done before. It's not that big of a deal. It's just that we got to send a police officer there to take care of the crossing, if the rep is out. I think probably the whole time that the police department, that happened once. And we sent code. So in this particular case, that's probably what we would do moving forward. So my recommendation is that we approve it.
I move we approve resolution 2024-80.
I second.
We have a first, we got a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Alright, Section C, Resolution 2024-81, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Williston, Florida, authorizing the City Council President to sign a renewal agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation for the traffic signal maintenance and compensation plan for the fiscal year of 2024-2025 and provide an effective date. Utility Director Jonathan Bishop.
Yes, so this is the traffic maintenance report or contract we do every year. It's pretty standard. Everything's the same, and it's an increase of $1,248 over last year. Pretty simple.
Something that we do every year.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I will entertain a motion. Unless you have some questions.
You said it's an increase of how much?
$1,248 for a total of $41,206.72.
And are there lights at all of these places?
Yes.
There's still one at Southeast 10th?
No, this is for the traffic lights, not the DOT street lights. Stop sign or stop lights. Green lights, yellow lights.
Well, I know, but is there one at 10th?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So where is that $780 light? The first one. It's definitely not at 10th, or not the 10th that I know of. It used to be a school crossing there, but it's not now.
Yeah, I don't have an honest answer for that, to be honest with you.
I think it's the old school crossing light that's not there anymore.
That would make sense. I'll get back to you. I don't know.
But
I don't have.
I mean, I
an
hate
answer for
not to take their $780, but I don't think the light's there anymore.
that. Either way, the money's ours.
Yeah. Whatever y'all think. I just don't think there's a light at Southeast. It doesn't say Southeast. That's why I asked.
Is that the one down by the what was by the car wash? Not car wash.
The laundromat.
Laundromat.
It was the Alamo, but now it's something else.
Spin City.
Me too. We talked about actually
Could-
putting one there last
could
week. Wasn't
they-
it last week? Jackie asked for a light as we came in to slow people down right there where they're going across. So tell them we want the light back.
Could they put up a sign that just says caution with the yellow light flashing?
I mean, we talked about it last week, our last meeting.
It's not that easy, but that's what you.
I know it's not that easy, but there's
No.
school buses and people cross the road. The school bus stops there.
No, I agree. So if that's your direction, I'll work on it.
And they've got it on there.
Not to mention it's hard to see past the laundromat.
I
So
agree.
people have to pull out a little bit further to be able to see whether or not they can go.
If that's your direction, I'll work on it. I'm good.
Because that would
So
give,
that would be a safety issue.
give them a warning
Just
before
slow
they
down.
meet Alex.
Yes, sir.
And even instead of saying school zone, if it said approaching school zone, like we talked last week, which is a true statement. You're approaching like 3 school zones right there.
President Cox, if I may.
You may.
You guys remember we have that Safe Streets for All grants that Walt is managing, and that'll be when we find areas like that. That's when we go back and we tell them that we need to put it up, and then they pay for it.
Very good.
Yeah. So
Thank you, Ms.
maybe a
Jones.
little while if we have to wait for that, but we'll put that in for now, and then if we have to wait to get it paid for, we'll work on it.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
The amount that they're charging us, it include that light?
They're paying us.
That's the amount they're paying us to maintain the lights.
Oh, okay. So they're paying. So if there's no light there, they're paying us for
Yeah.
light.
Yes, sir.
maintained.
That's what I said. Either
Doesn't
way,
exist?
either way, we're
Exactly.
getting the money.
Okay, I like that money.
Yeah.
That's why I said I hate to take the money away, but I don't think there's a light there.
They can't keep track of their lights. Anybody else have any other discussion? Anybody in the audience? Mr. Brevard?
Yep, little advice maybe. Maybe council attorney will get some, but I would probably not execute this contract knowing it's improper. It's improper. I would not sign this knowing that it's not correct.
Are you saying about the 10th Street light?
Yes, sir.
Would
So,
you like to leave the room for a minute?
no, no.
There may be another 10th Street, but I'm unaware of any other. Do y'all know of any other 10th Street that that even used to have a light? Much less has one now. That's the only one I can think of. And it's not there anymore.
I would concur with the city manager.
All right. So should we table this till?
So, council, I do want to point out that I believe that you're talking about the pedestrian flashing beacons, right? Right, because that's not a light. The traffic signals are the 4,000. The pedestrian flashing beacon is the one that's being referred to of 27 and 10. And that could be that they have a plan or that it's in their comprehensive plan to have one established there. So I agree with what you're saying, but I think that if we clarify with them that's their intention to have that placed there and us to have it maintenance.
Yeah, I think that my recommendation would be that you can approve it conditional upon staff confirming that that pedestrian flashing beacon actually does exist.
Do we just want to table it?
You can do that too. It's up to you.
You need to let Patricia give a report because it's coming to me on my phone.
Well, y'all should be doing this stuff on this.
It's somebody out of the room that's coming to me on my phone. I didn't.
I know. All right, let's finish this one, and Miss Latricia.
Yeah,
can-
let's.
It'd be nice. Yeah.
So how would y'all like to do it? Approve it?
So are we going to table or approve it
Are we gonna
contingent
table?
upon their?
It's up to you all.
I would say.
All right.
I would.
Whoever makes a motion gets a second wins.
I would move that we accept resolution 2024-81 as approved by DOT after request.
All right. Any other discussion?
So does that mean he's gonna wait to sign it, or is he gonna sign it now?
That means that there's no execution of the document until staff
And
does
then they may need
what
to
you've
send a new
conditioned it upon. But we don't have to see them again.
Right, but we don't have to.
That's
see it.
correct.
All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, move to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
5-0. All right. Next is Miss Latricia. A brief calls.
The counts that I have are from City Hall here in Williston. They're not off of Tammy's website, so I only have the counts from here. And the counts from here was Meredith 157, Stark 161. But if you look on Tammy's website, it is different. They still have more votes to count, so these are unofficial. I will have the official count on Thursday.
Is she within that 1% where they would have to do another election?
So the one off of her
Recount.
site is not right.
The one off of her site is up to date, yes. It's more accurate than mine. Mine is just for one precinct.
There is only one precinct for Williston.
But they had more voting,
Like mail-in.
early voting and mail-in voting, yes, at her precinct. Yes.
Could
This
you
one shows
repeat
it.
the numbers?
For
This shows 100%.
the voters here at precinct 7 was Meredith 157, Stark 161.
This one says Meredith 316, Stark 314.
Right.
So I'd
But
say it's
that was from the main.
Which is
That
probably why we
includes all
should
the-
wait until
that
the
includes all
final
the
is out
mail-ins
before we
and
start
early
to tell
voting.
people.
I'm sorry.
I'd say this includes all the
is.
early voting and the mail-in.
Yes. So these are unofficial. Official will be Thursday. Not that they do a recount.
So, Councilmember Jones, what did you have?
I have 316 for Ms. Martin and 314 for Mr. Stark for a total of 630.
And to be clear, it's not what you have. That's what you're saying Tammy has.
It's and actually what I got was a text from Mr. Stark that said, "Please congratulate Ms. Martin." That's what I got. That's exactly right.
That's what I was
It's
asking.
right on her website.
That's what I was asking. Thank you, Chief.
But it's
I would like
by
to
2
say
votes.
that
So are
if
they
I-
going to have
if I
to?
may,
Are we
I would like to
Mrs. Mayor.
say that it is refreshing to see that kind of activity in an election
Yeah.
instead of nobody wanting to be elected and people being moved forward because nobody was willing to do it. I think it is refreshing and it's a good sign for us that we are having contended elections. Thank you.
All right, so now we all can put our phones away. Because it says so on the back of the rules. Cell phones are supposed to be quiet.
Did you hear it?
They're supposed to be off.
It doesn't say that. It takes the bill, not me.
We're not special.
I'll be glad to read it.
I don't feel any special than these people back here. So,
It says for members of the public.
well, thank you. All right, Section D, Resolution 2024-82. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Williston, Florida, approving the assignment of lease and acceptance of assignment between, is it N1 or NI? N1, okay. Way these are done. N1 5JT LLC, Williston Aviation LLC, in the City of Williston for property at the airport identified as Hardstand 9, amending the lease between Williston Aviation LLC and the city for property at the airport identified as Hardstand 9 to include additional land, authorizing the city council president to execute all necessary documents, and providing the effective date. Airport manager, Benton Steve.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council, what we have for us tonight is a little bit of housekeeping for us out at the airport. During the construction process of a hangar on what we call Hardstand 9, the builder got a little overzealous with his parking lot and paved on some land that wasn't actually within the confines of his lease. So we had him come out and at his cost do the survey, and once he got the legal description, we sent it over to Kirsten, and then he made a request at the same time to basically change from one LLC to another LLC to do a little housekeeping on his end. So that's what the assignment and acceptance is for, and then the amendment is for changing the size of the land lease. So it's going up in size, which will generate a little additional revenue for us, with hardly any other impact on the airport.
So we're increasing the size because he went too far with his paving.
Yes, ma'am. It's in an area where it's not going to affect anything. Like he's on a hard stand, way out in the middle of nowhere. There's hardly anybody around him. He's probably one of the closer people to a runway, but he's still far enough away that parking lot won't even affect that. And if anybody wants to come by, I'll happily take you on the golf cart right over there.
I'm a customer.
Come on.
Anybody else have any questions?
There's not really any alternative, other than ripping up the pavement.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're making a little extra money.
Yes, sir.
And it's still the same people assigned to the lease, just a different corporation that he owns.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's a viable corporation.
Yes, ma'am.
To clarify, it's an LLC.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not incorporated.
I'm just
Gotcha.
making sure.
Yeah. Got it. I just think in division of corporations.
Anybody else have any questions or anything? No. All right. I will entertain a motion for resolution 2024-82.
I make a motion that we approve resolution 2024-8.
Is there a second? Any other discussions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. Section E, Resolution 2024-83, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Williston, Florida, authorizing the City Council President to sign contract documents for the federally funded Small Cities Neighborhoods Revitalization Community Development Block Grant awarded to the City of Williston for fiscal year 2022. Funding cycle. City Planner Laura Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's right. It is 2022 funding cycle. I had a couple people ask me if that was correct. Remember back in October, we were told we were awarded this. You did a resolution in May, letting us do it, and then you gave us a resolution again, letting us do the match. So we're at the point where we're ready to sign the documents. I don't know why it takes so long. They're already sending me emails about the next cycle. So, but this is how long it takes. So don't get confused. This is the one that was $700,000, and we did have a match of $62.75. And if you want specifics on what it was, Donald could probably help you, or maybe Walt. But this is just to make sure that Mr. Cox can sign the documents, because before it was Miss Jones. She was our president at the time. So we're basically changing names. Yeah.
And it is the lift station in Southeast 9th, I believe, and two paved roads.
Northeast 9th Street.
Northeast 9th?
Northeast 9th Street.
Okay.
It's the one that was in the gentleman's yard.
Yeah.
The city owns property directly across the street on the east side of 9th Street, and we have property there. It's going to be completely rebuilt, dismantled in his yard, upgraded. And then to get the points, benefit of that in order to be awarded it was that's about $450,000 of the grant. The other money is going to repave and resurface Southeast 10th Street, Southeast 9th Terrace, Southeast 9th Street, and sections of 1st and 2nd Ave between.
Yeah.
So we're actually getting paved roads and a lift station out of it, so we're really excited on that.
That's awesome. Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Jones?
I move resolution 2024-83 be approved.
I second.
Do we have any other discussion? Seeing none, move to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
5 votes.
Thank you.
All right, item F. Discussion with possible action, fiber broadband services for Williston on City of Williston electric poles. City Manager Terry Brevard, IT Director Aaron Mills, Public Works Supervisor Donald Barber.
So I'm going to let Donald take the lead on this.
So this is to follow up on our previous council meeting. Council wanted us to go through and start beginning the process to work on an RFQ for services for someone to come out, a third-party contractor, and build the system. We had some advice from some consultants. The statute was in question. We've attached that onto your packet. There were some questions as to whether or not we qualified under it. We've reviewed with Wright Pierce. We've reviewed with Kirsten, and they have assured us that this project would qualify under that. So this is basically saying from the council, yes, go ahead and put out the RFQ. There is a lot of work that's been done on that. We are basically ready to go with that. It'll be very short that we could put that out. And we have a packet that we could follow up at the next meeting that would have that RFQ with all the language, with all the caveats within it. So if you have any questions at this time, this does differ from the presentation. This is no longer micropops. We took feedback. This is direct to the home hardline fiber. This is no longer 100 megabytes as our largest package. It is our standard package will be 1 gig up and down. And of course our price point is going to remain the same. So at this time, if I can call Hector, I guess you guys had a question not just for us, but for another proposal. So we honored that as well, and he can cover some of that information. I believe there was a packet put on each one of your all's dioceses.
Well, good evening, everyone. Hector Samaria with Performance Services. Before I get started, I want to introduce Anne Marie Moore with our company. She handles all of the LiDAR surveying. She handles our thermal imaging, and she's a drone pilot, so she used to do the aerial surveys as well. Love having her here. We're going to be probably flying her drone from all day tomorrow here throughout the city, so looking forward to that. As Donald mentioned at the last council meeting, you asked me to do some comparisons, so I've done that. Very first page that you have in front of you. The only reason I brought that, or I'm showing that, is I wanted to give you a sense of the numbers, because your $50 per service is great. That's a wonderful price. But when you look at Ocala's pricing, and this is an average price. This isn't what they actually charge their customers, but what they're generating through their various services. That 3150 customers generating 6.8 mil. That's almost $180 a month that each account is generating. Of course, that's not per account. I'm sure there are some high-end customers that are in there, but I wanted to give you that sense of it, because when you talk about $50 per service, it's nowhere near that, and maybe in the future somewhere you're going to see much more than that. Slide number 2, just a reminder, a lot of things to look at. We're looking at a turnkey solution. As Donald mentioned, going from the micro pops to full fiber, from fiber to the pole, now fiber to the homes. And we're also looking at any other need that the city may have. So those are the things that are coming into play. Looking at all the cost of your resources, which Donald provided at the last council meeting, all the things you see there. Third slide, by the numbers. I wanted to share this with you because when I looked at Central Florida Fiber, and Denny was wonderful in providing me with information, and I looked at your numbers, obviously the numbers were different. Number of customers, what you want to charge per month, how many customers you're going to have, subscription percentage, all of these things were different. So what I did is, in order to compare apples to apples, so that you could take a look at which one made the most financial or technical sense, was I highlighted those areas in yellow. I used 4.5 as a project cost that came from Central Florida Fiber. I used 1,048 customers starting in year 3 as your baseline. I used, again, Central Florida's $70.74 average cost per customer. And then I used an annual full revenue of $17,000 from Central Florida to the city. From the city, a lot of various numbers that are there. What I'm using from the city is that $565,460 annual cost. I started in year 3 of what it's going to take for you to operate your fiber internet. So those are the numbers that I use. So on page number 4, you see what I put in there. You see on the left side, and again, I'm just looking at 15 years. I used a consistent 1048 on number of customers every year. And that assumes that there's never any growth. You're not going to grow internally. You're not going to have any new developments. It's a very fixed number. And again, I use that 70.74 monthly rate. And I did escalate that at 3%, but I did that for all scenarios. Again, just trying to compare apples to apples. Your operational expenses, I jumped it up. It was in year 4 that it went to the full $565,000 in operational expenses to run your fiber. The debt service, again, I used at $4.5 million for the debt service, and I subtracted that out. Bottom line is, when I ran those numbers, you still would net just over $2 million in this scenario. Change any of the variables, but I wanted to, again, comparing apples to apples. So in this scenario, you net $2 million. Slide 5, 15 years. Slide 5, I said, well, what if you were to increase your customer base by 3% a year? So you would jump at, 10, 20 people a year for growth or for just natural customer capture. I wanted to share with you that if that happened at 3%, I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but again, I wanted you to get a sense of what you might be able to accomplish. And you can see that number jump from just over $2 million in annual net revenues that you would be able to put into your budget, jump to $5.2 million. So again, this is just 2 scenarios. So then I went to the Central Florida Fiber scenarios, and Denny certainly is welcome to correct anything that I've done here. But their numbers told me that you would net $211,000, I guess some change a year. That's what you would net. So I added to that highlighted line 18,000 in pole lease revenue. So that's why that in the first circle you see there's $229,000 is what you would net starting in year 3, and then I grew that at 3%. Cost of resources, because it's going to be shared 50-50, instead of that $565,000 that was presented to you last time, I cut that in half. You're going to share in the equity and the revenues. You're going to probably share in the maintenance. So I had to make that half as much. Again, that could be lower, it could be a little higher. Again, these are just numbers to plug into a formula. And so when I ran these numbers, you see down at the bottom, you are in the hole $3 million. You didn't make, not only did you not make any money, you lost $3 million. It cost you $3 million in this scenario. And then I ran one other scenario, again based on the numbers I was provided by Central Florida. And that number is, I said, well, 211, that seems kind of low. Maybe you're really splitting half the revenues that they are projecting, and the revenues they were projecting is $889,000. So I said, well, let me just cut that in half. What does that do to the numbers? And even when I did that, you would net just under $600,000 down at the bottom right corner. So in these apples to apples, your best financial choice clearly was keeping it in-house. Happy to answer any questions, but I wanted to run that comparison for you as requested at the last council meeting.
Sorry. I was going to say my first comment is there's no way in the world that we're going to have 1,928 customers.
You're right. I used 1,048. All the scenarios.
Okay.
Ms. Jones, that's
not
growth.
On page 3.
No, that's growth.
Do what?
That was growth. The projection over the 15 years.
I'm looking at this page right here.
Right. That was just a potential customer. Call it your electric
Okay,
services.
so how many customers did you use on the other one?
What you see highlighted there on the left side, subscribers,
It says
6%.
200. The first year, 600. I don't think there's any way we'll get 1,048.
This is what, again,
I mean, we don't have that many. We have barely that many utility customers.
You have, well, I think 17 or.
How many utility customers do we have?
Roughly 1,800 customers.
Including the water and sewer that are not in the city limits.
No, but we would service everyone in our service district.
Okay.
That's what the design construction would be. That's what the parameters are. We would run fiber to everyone that we offer a utility service to.
Even if they're not in the
First time I've heard that.
Oh yes, that's always been the
Because
plan.
I think we only have 900 and some odd that are in the city limits. That aren't water and sewer that are out of the city limits.
It's roughly 1,200, I believe, in the city, and I believe the rest, which you talked about, would be water and sewer. Those would be outside.
That are outside.
Yes, ma'am.
But we won't get them all. I mean, I think we'd be lucky if we had 17. If we do have 1,700, including the ones that are out of the city limits, and we got half of them. Even if we got 1,000 of them, 1,000 of the 17. I don't think we could. I don't think we would. With so much competition that we have now. I mean, I love the numbers of the Williston that he's presenting for Williston, but I don't think it's realistic. I don't know how we would ever get that number of people.
So we just took the numbers that were done on the grant study, and we took the numbers that were provided by the Connect Humanity and the LIT grant, and we just translated exactly what they studied out. That was when they were going to recommend a third-party partner.
And that was like 3 years ago.
No, ma'am, that came out earlier this year.
There are just so many other people in the market. I don't know how in the world you'll ever get everybody. I just think it's, but of course, if you cut that number in half, it's still a lot of money.
But even if you don't get that amount of people, if we outsource it to someone else, based on the numbers that we're seeing, we may come out with nothing, right? So even if we did it in house, we would get something, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what we're asserting. I mean, that's up for y'all to decide. We're just here to move in whichever direction you guys desire.
And we have to look to the future. If you have this as a council, if you decide to do this, Williston is growing. And, you know, you're basing all these numbers on existing customers, but in fact, Williston is growing. We're in a prime location. It is my belief you're going to continue to grow. I don't have any strong feelings either way, but I think we should. This is just like I remember Gerald Hefcoat talking about gas. Oh, he used to rage about we weren't pushing gas enough. And it turned out he was right.
Yeah, gas is a great thing.
And I think this is what I've been thinking about is we provide utilities as a city. And I'm just looking at this. I think it's another utility. I think if you choose to do it, I think it's a good idea.
But we have no gas competition. We're it. If they want gas, they have to come to us, unless they have LP bottle gas.
So,
Ms.
Meredith, go ahead. I'll go ahead.
My question was, say for example, the proposed RV park that we would be providing utilities for, would they be considered one customer? Would each individual hook
So
up?
that's one of the discussions we're having in the developers agreement meetings with them. There's two models that we would propose. One would be wholesale, which wouldn't be as Hector mentioned, a normal $50 charge.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other model would be we would actually be the provider to the residents there, and they would be month to month, no contracts of any kind, and we would service them. The point would be whatever was done, the infrastructure would be run and paid for by the developer. I want to make that very clear. We would not be paying to spread out. As new developments come in, we would update ordinances, codes, things of that nature, and encourage them that all of these things need to be done underground and adopt standards that meet what we would want to see in the future, irregardless of whether we're the provider or not.
Yeah, we don't encourage them. Today it's a requirement. So if you come in and you develop a new development in the city, you know, you're going to have to put in telecommunications along with whatever else is running. It's my understanding from talking to other people that they can run it next to the power line, same company. So
a good example of this would be Country Lane Estates. They didn't have any option at that time, and so they contracted with CenturyLink, and they paid quite a bit of money. Mr. Garcia and Nick from Lennar stated that they had a huge price tag to have Quantum dedicated just to those 98. But it was important for them, obviously, in marketing and selling those homes. We've already taken on 5 of those homes from that package that they paid a fortune for onto the existing CalLink. The townhomes came up the other day, and Lennar is again interested in basically then partnering with us. That's the discussion now. So there's, outside of our normal customer base, there's 58 customers right there. And again, they would put in and pay for all the infrastructure. We would just provide the service.
So, and just to clarify, just 2 more things real quick. So when we talk about the new developers, we will do that regardless of what internet service is provided. Yeah, it's just going to be, that's what you're going to have to install. When it comes to the RV park, I know that the general manager there has asked us several times to come in and take over their internet service. So they're looking to get out of the internet.
And that's 400 customers we don't have in this metric either.
But that would go either way, whichever way we decide to go.
And the $70 is throughout 15 years? Or
So
is it going to increase?
He was comparing apples to apples to be fair to both proposals as far as revenue forecasts. We're not proposing $70. We are proposing $49.99, and that's 1 gig up and 1 gig down. That's both for commercial and residential. We don't see any need. It's great to have profits, and some of these numbers are really attractive, but for our perspective from the staff is if it's done through the city, it needs to meet a need and do something for the residents across the board, not just those who can afford the, kind of supreme packages. So we're not recommending to do any more than $50.
And if we voted to go with you, how are you going to advertise this in order to maximize the?
That's a great question. So part of the RFQ that we've already started developing with Wright Pierce to put out, if you guys approve this, has within the design and construction for whoever bids out on this, as a requirement as being part of that is the marketing. So as it's being installed by third-party contractors and being hooked up in real time to homes, they wouldn't build the whole system. They would do one street, and then that street would be marketed through the company, and it would also be marketed through staff.
And what's your time? And what would be your timeline to have it completed?
So we provided Terry and Kirsten, Walt did an RFQ schedule that we've got as a rough draft, and there's actually a schedule on there. We can publicize that for you guys, and you guys can look over it. We weren't pushing that because we're still in the rough draft. The staff was getting it together, and but next council meeting we'll have that ready, and you guys will decide if you want to approve that specific RFQ or make any changes to it. We obviously have 30 days for the RFQ to go out. Once it goes out, 30 days to 60 days for contract review. Obviously, there's whoever's awarded it has design time, but we're expecting construction hopefully to begin by the 1st of next year.
So, technology changes. So, how does it do in the fiber world? You know, you have your routers, they get upgraded to get better. Is there something built in to this for upgrades of equipment and things like that?
That's the operating cost that we provided, the numbers that he used from our original presentation. That's why our operating numbers are high. We don't want to make the same mistakes of the past. We want to make sure that you have money invested in capital. And as those technology changes are made, that annually every year, the staff would begin to integrate those into inventory and do those in real time. So that's why the operating budget by year 3, year 4 would max out at that amount that we had listed. That's not the starting from the get-go operating budget. That is an operating budget that builds in capital.
With no increase to the customer.
With no increase to the customer, yes, ma'am.
Subscribers, 70%. Is that just a what we're going for, or is there a lower number that we're looking at?
This particular by the numbers page was intended to show that if I asked Central Florida for some numbers, city for some numbers, I wasn't getting the same numbers. So I just picked out the high cost, $4.5 million, the high cost for operational maintenance of 560. So I picked out those things to keep it stable because it would be too hard to use these numbers and these numbers separately in a calculation. But to you, it's an important question you're asking on customer base. I use 60%, which is a projection from Central Florida Fiber. It may be lower, it may be higher, but let's just say that it's lower. The intent of this is not that, the intent of this is to show you the impacts of you doing it versus somebody else doing it. Okay. And that slide number 4, if I lower the customer base to 800, 700, your bottom yellow number is going to go down. But if I do that same thing, use the same customer base on the page 6, you're already starting at a negative $3 million. That's going to increase in negative direction. So the intent was to show you which one makes the most financial sense through these tables.
Because I'm over here like 70%. I mean, it's great to shoot big, but I was glad that we're
not proposing that, and we're also not proposing a 4.5 million either. Again, that was utilized so that there was apple to apple comparison.
Right.
We don't suspect that price tag would get near that.
So as I read this, looking at page 4, 15 years from now, 1,048 customers would, if it just, even if it stayed at that amount, which would be significantly less than, I would assume, 70% of our population, we're still netting $2 million annually for the city.
Total net over 15 years. The annual net is that
It's 340. Sorry, yeah, I've got it. Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you.
I don't see CenturyLink putting any money into our system. They haven't done it in years. So as fiber comes along, it will attract people to it. Doesn't necessarily mean that they'll switch. I know, and I'm going to use my in-laws. They're up in age. So for them, the fiber wouldn't be. For them, my father-in-law would be lucky to open emails. Shoot me if he does that. But I think we could have some. I don't think we'll be able to take advantage of growth there. I don't know. We just have to come out, have a good informational packet, to go to customers with.
Donald's right. The marketing campaign is going to be key. I mean, I shouldn't say key, but it's going to be it has to be aggressive and it has to be plentiful, and you got to get it out there as soon as possible. And I'll add, and I hesitate to do this, but the RFQ process hopefully is no more than 60 days. I mean, you could have this thing fully operational by January. If you said start today, the entire city could be covered by January. So your 60 days or whatever it's going to take for the RFQ process is going to slow you down.
And I think that's where you're going to, if in the event you can get it started or be done by the beginning of the year, you will probably have close to your 60 or 70%, because a lot of people who are in the city now are going with another company because we don't have it. So if we get it and we are marketing the correct way, then we are looking to capitalize on those people as well.
Yes. And the other thing that wasn't mentioned in this cost comparison is, if you look at page 2 of his presentation, you guys will notice that it has O&M savings. Those are operations and maintenance. And this was part of the presentation that the staff gave last time. We have other needs in the future that we'll be talking about. SCADA, that's our wells and our sewer and our lift stations having operations remotely so that we don't have spills, that we don't have breakdowns, that we don't have interruptions in service. And then, of course, you have possibly AMI, which is that advanced metering information. That's for the power, for the gas, for the water. So those things not only provide customer portals and service for them, but no matter who we go with in the future, whether we're on someone else's fiber, whether we're on someone else's cellular, there are costs monthly and annually in those services. If the city owns those services, then that cost is eliminated in the future and forever on that operations and maintenance cost if we're already paying it for a revenue stream. So you basically maximize those savings, and that's what Hector was alluding to earlier when he mentioned that there are other savings besides just the revenue that's generated from a customer base.
So in year 4 and year 5, there's a negative amount. Why is that?
First of all, that won't really
On
happen.
4. Okay.
The way we structure the financing is that you will never, in the worst case scenario, you break even in any given year. Generally, we'll try to adjust. It's not like a fixed car payment or a fixed mortgage. These are, we flex them based on projected revenues and costs to ensure that in any year you aren't coming out of pocket. So when I ran this model through just a standard spreadsheet, that's what it came out to. But it won't happen that way in actual life.
I mean, that's the whole point of the statute, right?
Correct. Because then I'd be writing you a check for $33,000.
Right.
I wanted to ask Kirsten a question. If this gets approved tonight, when does the cone of silence hit? When the RFQ is issued or now?
I don't remember looking at you. If the request, if the RFQ is approved tonight, if the move forward is approved tonight, is that the question?
But whatever however it's worded, it's not issuing an RFQ, it's approval to issue an RFQ.
Mm-hmm.
But the RFQ won't be issued according to Donald until the next council meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So the cone of silence would start at the next council meeting, or whenever it's
The
issued.
cone of silence will start when it's issued. Correct, when it's sent out.
Thank you.
What is a cone of silence?
Sounds like fun. Sounds like fun, doesn't it?
So, to give sort of a broad strokes answer, the point of RFQs, RFPs, these competitive bidding processes that we do, is that it allows for everyone to be on the same playing field, so no one gets insider information from any members of the council or any members of the staff other than those that are designated to look at it, so that you can't make an proposal that would be more favored by the council than anyone else. Essentially, it means you can't talk to anybody about the proposal until you get it back.
Or have an unfair advantage
Correct.
on the other bidders.
Yes, that's the whole point, is to eliminate unfair advantage.
Okay.
By the way, Mayor, it's good to see you back. Good to see you back.
So if we move,
It's good to be alive.
Agree.
so if we decide to move forward, then everyone else is out of the running, and it's specifically City of Williston.
No, ma'am. Anybody can build any type of fiber or internet or broadband as long as they go through the permitting process and all that. What we're asking council to do is you only own one piece of property that's your asset, and that you dictate what happens to it, and that's the poles. And so tonight, all we're talking about is what direction do you want those poles to go? Do you want the city to develop something on our asset? Do you want us to partner with someone, or do you want someone else to do that? That's the discussion. We're not forbidding or stopping or preventing anybody, as the one gentleman was here in his cute pants last time. He's 100% right. It is a free market, and this is not like gas. This is not like power. This is not like water. Anybody can enter into this space.
Yeah, and not to put too fine of a point on it, but not just that anyone can enter the space and they can, it's that we cannot deny them that opportunity. So it is a forcibly free market that we cannot infringe upon.
If we have a good product, we'll get a good return. If we don't, we won't.
It's all about that marketing that you brought up on how we're going to present it. Because right now, with what we have, how we rolled out the initial CalLink, they don't trust us. They meaning the citizens. They don't trust us. So it's all in how we're going to have to prove that we have a better product, that we can service that product, and that we have that product and it's ready now.
I don't know that they don't necessarily trust us. I mean, a lot of us didn't know about
They don't trust
I
us.
have been trying to get internet since CalLink first hit the pasture.
So once again, a lot of people do not know about CalLink because CalLink is centralized in this area.
But it wasn't sold that way.
Because there is no line of sight.
Well, that's what I mean.
So,
it was line of sight,
right.
and
So,
it gave
but
us
what I'm
bad
saying is
a
you're
bad rep
saying-
because of it.
Right.
Mr. President, if I may.
It may be that
Yes, Ms.
people
Jill.
are not.
The
But it's
CalLink
also
that
people don't
you
know.
guys know and love, that was given to us as part of a grant to test whether or not we could do the internet in downtown Williston. And if it worked, we were going to move out. So we didn't market it to outside downtown because we didn't have it. This was a test. So I don't know anybody who's unhappy who's hooked up with CalLink that has it. The problem was we didn't have the funds to spread it out past downtown. And that was the whole point of the 2 grants that we received. We were a test that they said that we were one of the greatest tests that they've done. They invited us to California for a week to show off what we've done. So I believe that they can do it, but they're going in a different direction from CalLink. So that's why, they're changing the name, because it's not even CalLink anymore. Now it's fiber. So CalLink wasn't a disaster. It wasn't a failure. It was what it was supposed to be.
And I didn't say it was a disaster or a failure. I have it in 2 places, and I use it, and it is good.
Thank you.
But there are those who can't get it.
Yes.
Just as you've said, Ms. Hines, and they are not happy with us because they can't get it. Even
Yes.
though they can't get it, and it's just because it's line of sight. But we are going to have to sell them otherwise.
Right.
Absolutely.
And tell them this is a totally different product.
And hence why the name change.
I haven't heard that before either.
And that's why I'm saying it's not always necessary that people don't trust. You have to know about it in order to not trust. You know what I'm
Thank
saying? You understand what I'm saying? So I'm just saying we need to be careful with the word that we use when we talk about different things.
Yeah, about our utilities.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we
That's
took
all.
a lot of, we heard what y'all and the residents said over many months, and we took a lot of that into consideration. I mean, like I said, we didn't have a chance to announce it, but the RFQ that you will see a name change, because it needs to be, it is a retirement of that experiment, and it is a dawning of something that is completely different than what we have. And the other, criticism obviously was the timing of it. And we recognize we do have a limited staff. So the whole point of the investment at the beginning is to have the payoff at the end and capture that and get to market as quickly as possible. So third-party contractors, that's all they do. They will be coming in and they would be doing the install, even all the way to the home. I mean, we had even hybrids of this. Okay, well, we'll have them just do the middle and last mile, and then we'll do the connection to the home. And it got to the point where, no, we just need to get it there. We need to get it done in a professional manner. It means all that's going to be part of that RFQ that you all will get a chance to see, and understand that each of the things that you guys mentioned in all the presentations and the residents' input from the surveys that CalLink put out, all of that criteria was addressed in how we're trying to go about this at this point to get to that market.
Ms. Jones, you brought up marketing where it's been brought up, and very first page, bottom quote, I think this is Ocala, and I found that very, compelling for Ocala. We are your hometown fiber internet provider with a local customer service office and local technicians, and I think that's maybe a great start for your marketing campaign.
So what do you plan to call it?
Williston Fiber.
Just as easy as that.
Anybody else have any questions?
I think Walt might necessarily
Mr.
get
Nichols.
up.
Yeah, he looks like he found something.
Good evening, Walt Nickel with Wright Pierce. I just wanted to qualify or clarify some terms as we go with this, because this is a very different project. It's a hybrid project, a design build project. It also crosses the line of Florida statutes, guaranteed energy performance savings contracts. So there's a lot of rules and regulations that have to be followed if it falls under that. If it falls under a design build scenario, which it also falls under that, there's the whole CCNA, Consultants Competition Negotiation Acts, that you have to follow. All of those pretty much mandate that you do, and we use the term RFP, RFQ, that we do this process as an RFQ, a request for qualifications. That is what we're going to ask for, and that is what we're developing right now. We've done a lot of work in a week and a half, three meetings, drafts. We got more going on this week on this. But request for qualification is we put out a parameters of what the city wants. We're going to have minimum parameters, minimum performance criteria. And you put that out, and anybody who's interested and meets all those criteria can submit their qualifications. So those will come in. You will have an evaluation committee that you will form that will evaluate those, rank those, bring those rankings to council, and you can choose the top ranked firm, you can choose somebody else, and then you enter into contract negotiations. You don't have at that point a price. You just have the qualifications, and you're picking the most qualified for your needs. And then that you enter into negotiating the contract, the terms, the conditions, the financial aspects of it, and ultimately your price and these revenue numbers would fall into that. But that's when you get to that. So this process, we're expediting this a lot, and I want to maybe temper a little bit of the things that people, some of the dates and times and how fast this can happen. I mean, we're going at lightning speed right now. But yeah, there's a minimum of a 30-day advertising process for this RFQ. And even that, we're pushing. I think Donald wanted faster things. 30 days is the absolute minimum. You're asking submitters, the responders, to put financing it together. You're asking them to at least get the commitments for financing, to put a business plan together, how the financial plan is going to work, how the technical plan is going to work. And you're asking them to do all that and submit it to the city. 30 days is the absolute minimum. But if we go with that, then you have to have your evaluation committee that goes through and evaluates those. There's a set process under CCNA and the Florida statutes that you have to do. Then it comes back to council. And you need to make your, a week and a half before council, get you all the information that you can then make that decision, and you make a decision. That decision then would authorize, engineering staff, your law director to develop the contract, though I think we'll be having drafts before that. But negotiate a contract, negotiate the price, the finances. That takes a month or two. I mean, how long does a typical developer's agreement take to work out between two parties? It takes some time. So getting ready to authorize and execute a contract by year's end is possible, but I think it's still very aggressive. Then whoever is selected has design and permitting. There's going to be, city permits will be easier, but you're also crossing state roads and county roads too. There's that whole permit process that will have to be done. And design has to happen by the person you select, and then you get the construction window. So I just want to kind of step through the process, how this is going to go. It's all being defined right now in the documents that we're creating with staff on the request for qualifications. So this has to go that route, as opposed to if you went and wanted a price in this opportunity, well, you have to have more of a design so that everybody's bidding on the same foot, the same level ground. This is qualifications-based selection.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but I have several questions.
Sure.
You said, if I heard you correctly, which is possible I did not, that they need to choose the contractor and then negotiate a price?
We are going to choose, I don't want to call it a contractor, the firm.
Okay.
The
That's
respondent.
contractor,
The
firm, I
respondent.
don't
Yeah,
care
this
what
is
you
a
want to call
different, because it's not like we're going, you've got
I've just
financial
never heard
management.
of choosing a contractor with no referral on the price.
That is what
That's
an
an
RFQ
RFQ
is.
That's just request for qualification.
Yes,
And
qualification.
the only thing you have to choose from then, if you choose one firm,
yes,
I'm assuming if the price that you negotiate with that firm is unacceptable to both parties, then you can go down the list?
Yes, you can. Yeah, and I didn't do that, but yes, the process is you have a ranking, and let's say we're fortunate that you get 5 submitters.
That would be unlikely.
If you had that, you rank them, and then you enter. The selection committee would make a recommendation to council. Councils, I see this all the time, typically take the recommendation of their selection committee, but you would have a resolution to say, yes, we are going to enter into contract negotiations with firm ABC. If you can't reach an agreement, you terminate those negotiations and you go down to the next and the next. But you can't go down to number 2 and get a higher price and go back to number 1. Once you say you continue down the list is how you have to do if you can.
I want to throw a kink in it altogether.
So when we ask about a timeline, we are asking.
question.
Oh, go ahead.
I said I want to throw a kink in it. Are we going to do the AMI at the same time? You're going to do them separate altogether?
When Terry and the staff talked about this, this needs to be very simple, and this needs to be laser focused on
Just
internet.
as quick as you can.
And because everything else compounds it. The benefit is if we start with this, everything else comes easier down the line.
It does.
But we do not want to conflate this with anything else. We don't want to make this any more complicated than it already is.
And I want to ask Mr. Hector, if we should choose you, and if we should negotiate a price with you, and you become our person, our financial person, then how easy is it to add to the agreement, to add AMI later, or would we need to just bid that all out again?
We would,
we would bid that out.
We would have to bid it
separately
again with
because so for that we can do an RFP. For this we have to do an RFQ. It's Florida law mandated.
Okay.
But for AMI you can do an RFP, and you can and the difference between those, just to reiterate, RFQ you just get who's qualified and what their qualifications are. RFP is you say this is exactly what we want, and people give you a number, what it's going to cost to do that.
Well, I know when we originally talked and we did a presentation, AMI was in the mix, and it was part of what he was going to present to us. And and I wondered if we were going to try to do it all at once. I guess not.
I would have given the quick answers, no. The other would have been if we do AMI, we could go through the same statute.
Yeah,
that
that's
we're
why I
doing
wondered if we were going to do it at the same time.
No, it's just too complicated.
Okay.
But my recommendation would be is if we move forward with an AMI system, it would make everybody's life easier, to include our citizens. We would run through the same statute process.
And just do the RFP instead of RFP.
Well, wouldn't you have to do an RFQ on that?
You do not have to do an RFQ on AMI.
Even though we're including the statute.
I don't understand the question.
So if I do AMI under the
provide the
Florida
bodies.
state statute that protects me and provides for the payment,
Correct.
is that an RFQ or an RFP?
So I guess I would need to clarify. I believe it's an RFP. But don't hold me to that.
Yeah, I haven't been. It would be under the statute. Would be an RFQ. I've seen many cities throughout the country that do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 with the same company. It would probably depend on how you write your RFQ today to allow for those phases.
That's kind of why I was wondering if we could write it all together, even if
Well,
we just
there's
did
one other,
phase 1.
There's one other caveat, and
Even
that
if
is
if we did phase 1 and we with nothing but
Right.
fiber in phase 2 that included the AMI.
correct, but we can also piggyback as well.
Yes.
And you can actually piggyback through this statute. So all the companies that offer it,
You mean
including
with
the one that
somebody
we
else?
choose with, they have contracts with other ones specifically on AMI, and those are everywhere. So if it's within so much time, Kirsten can walk us right through a piggyback, and none of that's needed.
Yeah, there are a lot of different options that are available. So the options that you have with communications, internet, are different. There's a different statute. It's governed by different things than AMI. So we're really sort of talking about. That's why I'm trying to sort of keep them separate, because they're not governed under the exact same rules. And so I don't want to conflate them and confuse either myself or anyone else.
I told you I was going to complicate.
I just want to clarify that when I asked about a timeline, it was not to rush. It was just to find out, because as we move forward, people are going to be asking, well, when are we expecting this to be done? So I want a general, not a hard date or a hard time, of possibly when it would be available. And that way, when people are
As early as best case scenario March, and as worst case scenario December of 2025.
And that's realistic.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
That is
thank you.
realistic.
They're going to have something else by then.
If I may
They may
ask,
not make.
I think you said it, but I just want to get clarified for my own understanding. If the city does this fiber, it doesn't cost us anything for the AMI. But if the city does not, we have to pay a fee for every hookup. Is that accurate?
So it's not accurate that we wouldn't have to pay for AMI, but the technology component, the communication element of it, there is an overhead. So if we have, so for example, it averages out. We've had like 10 AMI presentations. I think Terry's sick and tired of hearing about them. The rest of us are, anyways. And what we averaged out for all the presentations was about 80 cents per month per connection, right? So if you have a home that has gas and you have water and you have electric, those are 80 cents a month per connection to pay somebody, either cellular or they have relay stations, towers, or they're on fiber. So you pay those connections. So that's $2.40.
That we pay to somebody else.
Correct. That we would pay to somebody else. So you take our customer base, that $2.40 a month, you extrapolate it over 12 months, that's your annual cost for that communication. My point was that's eliminated if you own that communication. And it's the same redundant cost with SCADA as well.
But you know how we are. We pay ourselves. You know, we pay our own electric bill, we pay our own water bill, we pay our own gas bill.
But
we'll pay our own data bill.
But what we
too.
pay someone else won't matriculate into those general fund
I
places.
agree, but there'll still be a bill. That's okay. That's what we do. To keep it straight.
Anybody else have any questions? So, Ms. Kirsten, how can this, would we do it as a consensus or do it as a motion?
So if you want us to move forward with the RFQ process, I would request a majority vote just to give us a sense that that's what we want to do. Someone could.
You give somebody a check.
Or I could just keep talking about the
I make
differences
a motion
between
that, I was
RFQs.
getting ready to do it before you even said it, so, but I make a motion that we move forward with the proposed action.
Need a second?
A second.
Oh, all right. Any other discussion? All right. Moving on. Move the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. 5 votes. All right. Item 6, public participation. It's your second opportunity to address the council. You got anybody?
If anyone on Ring Central would like to participate, unmute your mic and speak up now, please. Nothing heard.
All right. Item 7, announcements. Staff? Any announcements? Anything? Council? I would just like to say that it was on the 14th of February, not February, August, when you guys went down to Miami with Hollywood. It was entertaining, enjoyable to be with the guys out fixing the problem, and all over the internet. Everybody just knew that we had a water main break, and it wasn't. It was actually in the pump shed. It was an electrical issue. They diagnosed it, got it fixed, it was back up in a quick amount of time. And everybody was just working together to make it happen.
My wife was thrilled there was not a boil water notice.
That was actually before we left.
Yep.
I was on Facebook talking to everybody.
That's what the workers kept asking, going, man, are we going to have to do the boil water notice? So, no.
Thank you, staff, for all your hard work.
So, I was thinking, here's the city manager, the mayor, all these people gone out of town, and no water.
You were here for a reason.
So, great job. And that's also a great job to the police and fire for everything that you guys do. That, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I just have a couple of short things. While we were at the Florida League of Cities and the Florida League of Mayors, there were some issues, and the city manager helped me out a great deal, and the chief of police was above and beyond. And I just want all of our citizens to know that those two people are there for us. They didn't have to do the things they did, They chose to do them, and I want the public to know that I greatly appreciate everything you both did.
Thank you. Ms. Wright, you have anything? No. Well, nobody else has anything? Can I get a motion for adjournment?
I motion we adjourn.
Can I get a second? We have a first, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aaron, I'm turning off this now.
And the time is 9:10.